it tells you a lot about grit in number one, because the main character, um, she is determined to succeed.
Oh
And
yeah.
she also loves movies. And
Mm.
this really inspires her
Hmm.
to, and incorporates what she's learned from movies
Yep.
into her everyday life.
That's
And
right. Yep.
I find now that I tend to also there's things that I've learned from movies as well that I use in my life.
Welcome to My Movie Story. I'm your host, Brian McAleer. This is the podcast where we dive into the movies that have shaped us. Each episode, we sit down with a special guest to discuss their all-time favourite film, the movie that changed their life, and the one film they think everyone needs to see. Get ready as we journey through the cinematic worlds that make us who we are. This is My Movie Story. Julie is a highly sought-after TEDx speaker, business coach, and award-winning author, dedicated to empowering entrepreneurs and leaders to build and grow successful businesses. With a passion for helping women establish and expand their brands, Julie has become a trusted advisor for many women. As a dynamic speaker, Julie has captivated audiences with her insightful talks and has been featured on prominent media outlets such as ABC, NBC, and Fox. She also hosts her own radio show, Confident You. Now, here's our episode with Julie. Well, hi, Julie. Welcome to My Movie Story. How are you going today?
I am doing great. Thank you so much for having me. I am thrilled to be here. I've been looking forward to our time together, Brian.
Thank you. Oh, I appreciate you saying that, and so have I. Actually, we first connected a few weeks ago and had a few conversations back and forth about your films, and I know it was a very careful choice, and you really sort of thought about it, and they're three great films. So before we jump into your films, Julie, tell us a little bit more about yourself. What do you do, and yeah, what's going on for you right now?
Yeah, thank you again. Well, I am a business and life strategist. I work with entrepreneurs mainly and also work with companies. I come into companies and I do trainings on several different topics. But when I'm working with entrepreneurs, I help them build a business with consistent income. This is one of the major faults that entrepreneurs have, that they ride that roller coaster ride and they cannot create consistent income. So I come in
Yeah.
with my business experience and I help them really be able to create the habits, the
Hmm.
infrastructure, and the strategy that helps them be able to service people and have the time freedom and income freedom that they desire from being an
Yeah.
entrepreneur.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Yeah, I
good
live in
to.
Connecticut as well. I moved here from New
Oh,
York
yeah.
City.
Yep.
Although I've been here 12 years, I still have a hard time saying I'm from Connecticut. I
Yeah.
enjoy it. I enjoy New England. It's beautiful. My
Yep.
husband is from here.
Yep.
But again, it's New York is basically where I feel more at home.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. Because I guess it's wherever your
Yeah.
upbringing took you and all of that. So, yeah, 100%. And yeah, so it's great to have you on here, and really cool to hear
Thank
about
you.
your business and how you help people. And definitely my ears pricked up a couple of times there because I do a bit of coaching as well, and I'm like, oh, okay, great. Well, maybe I'll have a separate podcast with you about that at some point.
Yeah, we should talk about it. I love
Fantastic. Yeah.
talking everything strategy, and
Yeah.
especially this time of year. People are
Mm.
starting to wrap up the year,
Hmm.
plan for a new one. And that's a lot of what I help entrepreneurs do, is create that right strategy.
Absolutely. Yeah. And just to know that things are operating and taken care of, because yeah, you want to get into that field of work to have more time, not be working longer,
Yeah.
and not see any change in lifestyle or pay. It's about the
Yeah.
freedom, and yeah, and it's a lot of responsibility, but knowing that there's a great coach out there like you who can help people with it, that's
Thanks.
awesome. So
You're so
fantastic. Yeah.
sweet. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. But yeah, get the time off. This is why you chose to be an entrepreneur.
Hmm.
Don't work the 24/7. Select
Yep.
the times. I don't work Friday afternoons. I'm moving in the new year. I'm working toward not working Fridays at all
Hmm.
because, again, I created that intentionality and have a very specific plan that I follow in the business. And that's what I teach other entrepreneurs to do.
Yeah, no, it's great. I think some version of a plan for life, I think, is really great, and that's definitely something
Yeah.
I'm looking at this year. Is trying to master plan my life a bit more, and have
Mm.
when you've got all these ideas, and it's like you don't want to be like, oh, I wish I'd done
Yes.
that. I wish I'd done this. You want to give
Hmm.
everything a chance to breathe and have a go. And if it doesn't work out, that's all right. At least you gave it a shot. And
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
yeah. So really cool,
Absolutely.
awesome. We've got some movies to talk about now, and
Yeah,
the
let's do
first
it.
one we're going to dive right into this because I know you're raring to go. Is your all-time
Um,
favorite film? And I say this in every episode, but I get to discover all these new films that I otherwise would never know about or might not
mhm.
be on my radar to go and watch because I have a very long list of films. So I didn't even know this movie existed. I guess I was a little kid in the early 90s when it came out. But we've had a few films that address this topic and this era. So I'm going to let you tell our viewers and listeners what is this movie, what's it all about, and why is it your all-time favorite?
Well, this movie, again, you are not the only one who has not heard of this movie.
Good.
I happen to know it because I read the book. And I have to tell you that I'm going to do it a disservice not knowing the author of the book. It will come back to me probably when I'm thinking about it later, but Shining Through is the movie that is my all-time favorite. It's
I'll meet you in 2 weeks.
Eyes down, say nothing, and try not to look like a spy.
What happened to the replacement?
The replacement is lost in Berlin.
Get her the hell out of there.
Go away, or you'll kill us all.
Michael Douglas, Melanie Griffith.
I want you on that train.
I can't come out now.
Shining Through.
it has everything. It's romantic, but it also has a little bit of suspense, a little bit of action and intrigue. The movie itself has a very it's set in the 1940s during World War II. And the main character is played by Melanie Griffith. So you either love her or don't like her. But I happen to think she was a really good cast for the show because she reminds me of that 1940s blonde bombshell kind of
Yeah,
person.
she had the look, didn't
And
she?
yeah,
Yeah.
she has that look and
Yeah.
she wears that red lipstick. The show also, the movie reminds me a lot of the other movies that my dad would watch, and I was very close with my dad. So I, although it's not well, now it is, I guess, an old movie, but when I watched it, I kind of felt like I was watching an old movie too,
Mm.
because the way that the movie is set up, it tells you a lot about grit in number one, because the main character, she is determined to succeed.
Oh
And
yeah.
she also loves movies. And
Mm.
this really inspires her
Mhm.
to, and incorporates what she's learned from movies into her everyday life.
That's
And
right. Yep.
I find now that I tend to also, there's things that I've learned from movies as well that I use in my life. And funny enough,
Mhm.
we talked about it with my husband earlier today.
Yep.
We were talking about the movie Working Girl that also has Melanie Griffith.
Yeah. Yep.
And I was telling him, I said, well, you have to kind of make the connection of the dots of like, if this is related to that. And he's like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, that's how I kind of figure out strategy sometimes in business,
Mhm.
because kind of like what the Melanie Griffith character does in and Working Girl.
Yep.
And he's like, oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
But
Definitely.
yeah, and that's the same thing that the character in Shining Through does, that
For sure.
she
Yeah.
uses what she's learned in these spy movies or
Yeah.
movies in her era to kind of look at life from a different lens.
Yeah.
And I love that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And she the what she stood for as a person, as a woman at that time, the world was at
Yeah.
war, and women typically didn't hold positions of power or
Hmm.
influence. And I guess working in the wartime, there were a lot of women
Hmm.
employed in that. If they weren't working as nurses, they were working in clerical roles, so lots of like
Yeah.
typing, that sort of thing. So I guess she sort of stood out from the crowd, and the men, and the main man, played by Michael Douglas, who we'll talk about,
Hmm.
was quite
Yeah.
caught off guard. And then a relationship starts to develop there a
To
little bit,
develop, right.
and then there's a few turning points. So yeah, can you comment a
Yeah.
little bit on that relationship and the Michael Douglas character? Because it was an
Yeah.
interesting casting, putting these two
Yeah.
together, and you know, the time that it was, you know, it was around the Basic Instinct phase. So Michael Douglas was
Hmm.
like, you know, he was everywhere. And
Yeah,
you know, if his film didn't have like a love scene in it, you know, it would be voiding
it
his
was.
contract probably. But yeah,
Absolutely,
you know, yeah.
absolutely.
Tell us a little bit about that
Um,
subplot.
so it's funny. Michael Douglas for me is one of these guys that um, he seems very rugged. And yes, he had done a lot of those movies in the 80s and 90s where he played the leading character. Um, I loved that he again played a very opinionated, very strong character,
Yeah.
but I loved more that her character stood up to him, was
Mm,
very outspoken,
yeah.
never, and again, a woman in that era was not necessarily that outspoken. So, and
Mm,
he learned to um, he didn't love it that she was outspoken, and because he was always being in charge, and he loved that being in charge character.
yeah. You did.
But again, he learned to accommodate and accept, and kind of go along with her ideas and go along with her character and accept that.
Yeah. Once he saw the value that she could bring to the
Yeah,
operation, that she was smart, very observant.
yeah.
You know, she spoke German fluently. So at first there
Hmm.
was a little bit of speculation. It was like, oh, is she the spy? Is he the
Is
spy?
she the spy? Right?
You know,
Absolutely.
who's who here in this
Um,
situation? Yeah. And
yeah.
then just as they're
I
kind of getting together, Pearl Harbor happens. Yeah. So I mean,
correct.
we won't spoil the film for anyone who hasn't seen it because obviously
Yeah.
how it all finishes and everything is really interesting. But then Pearl Harbor happens, and then they kind of get separated, don't they? Yeah.
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 And again, the story, the film itself, another thing that I really love is that there is a lot of historical aspects to the film,
Yeah.
right? So if you like history, if you're the kind of person who likes that aspect, you're going to enjoy the film. It's not just the storyline, but it's really how they weave what is really happening. And the
Mhm.
other part we didn't really talk about is that at the beginning of the movie, the character that Melanie Griffith plays is actually being filmed for a documentary. And she
Yes.
begins playing herself as an older woman recounting the story.
Yeah.
So I love that aspect too, because I think that there's such value
Mhm.
in the stories that we share. I don't know if you're familiar with the term the silent generation, but anybody from the 1940s and 50s, they're coined the silent generation because it's this generation that encounter war,
Yeah.
world war, and yet they kind of went about their business right
Yeah.
after the war was over and
That's
started
right.
to
Yeah.
work. And
Yeah.
it's so important that we create the opportunity to share the stories, to share the trauma and drama that was
Yeah.
going on in that time. And I feel
Absolutely.
that especially now this movie
Mm.
is timely. We
Yes.
can't
Very.
forget that there's some atrocities that happen in the world, and how it's not just the headlines, which in the movie there's a lot of headlines of what is happening in the world,
Mm.
but it really deep dives into the interpersonal relationships and the people, the humans, the relationships that are touched by the headlines.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point that you make there.
Yeah.
And obviously, you know, the peak of World War II was almost 90 years ago, which is hard to believe. And very
I
few
know it's
people
hard
who
to
were,
believe.
yeah, very few people who were a part of that and directly involved in that. There's not many
Mhm.
left today. My wife is quite
No.
fortunate because her grandfather, who has just turned 99 years old,
Oh,
um,
God bless them.
served in World War II, and
Wow.
he still remembers things in very vivid detail. And sitting down and hearing him talk is fascinating because it's like,
Mhm.
you know, the world has changed so much in that time, and he's
Yeah.
seen so much and lived through all of that. But now, like you said, we're seeing some parallels to what's going on in the
Hmm.
world today. So unfortunately, you
Yeah.
know, history does repeat itself a bit. But really important, I think, to listen to the stories of those people who lived through that,
Hmm.
so we can
Yeah.
learn from them, and think about, well, if this was to happen again, how might we deal with it as well?
Yeah.
I don't think people think about that too much.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other part that I really love about this movie is the main character, Lena, the Melanie Griffith character. She goes and finds herself in the other side of the world, right? Um, where her life could be in danger, yet every turn that there is a challenge, that something kind of comes up in the way of her completing her mission or going through what she's supposed to be going through. Every time she has a challenge, rather than just giving up, she's very tenacious. And I think that
Very,
that's something that all of us need to really apply to life, right? Of course, I come with a lens of a coach, that it's not like, oh, I can't do that, but really asking the question, well, how can I? And you see that throughout. And
yes,
even in the times in which she is disappointed, she is hurt by everything that happens in the movie, she still pushes through, and she keeps her sights on what the end result is and
that's
where
right.
she wants to go and what she wants to accomplish. And I
Yeah,
think that that's a great lesson for life. Like,
absolutely.
things are going to happen. People are going to disappoint you. The unexpected will come. But if
Mhm.
you keep focusing on what your mission is in life
Yep.
and what you're working towards, you will keep going.
Yeah, yeah, really well put. Yeah, and she's a very strong character and very
Yeah.
resilient, very resourceful. I guess you had to be in those times to survive,
Yeah.
and she's in really difficult circumstances where her purpose and her cover could be blown at any minute.
Yeah.
So it's a very, precarious sort of situation. And
Oh,
do
it
you
sure
remember how
is.
you first saw the film? Like when it came into your
Yeah, I
life?
went to the movie theater. I
Ah,
remember very
yep,
vividly.
yep.
At the time, I was living in Miami, and I had two jobs. I was a teacher by day, but because most teachers don't make a lot of money, at night I was also working in a store, in a retail store. And I remember, number one, I first bought the book at the bookstore in the mall.
Oh,
And throughout my, every time I would go to dinner, I would read. So I was really excited the movie was coming out. And I went after work. It was super late, but I went after work to see the movie, and had some friends meet me. So I do remember that very vividly. And I also remember there is a scene in the movie in which Melanie Griffith's character goes to, I believe, I don't know if it was the opera or a ballet, and she's wearing a beautiful gown. And I'm thinking, oh, I would love a gown like that. Which, and
yeah,
the design, and it's something that even now, like, I think about, and that's really my favorite style of gown. I've gone to
yeah.
a couple black tie affairs, and I'm always looking for something similar to that,
Ah,
even all
right.
these years later.
Mm. Yeah, I wonder if maybe you just call up the film studio, see if the costume's hanging in some warehouse
I
somewhere.
don't know. Yeah, right. I
You never
should.
know.
I think that,
You never
you
know.
never know for
Maybe
sure. Yeah.
Maybe Melanie Griffith's got it in her wardrobe at home and
Who
as a
knows? Who
memento.
knows?
Yeah. And I was
Yeah.
curious as I was watching it, I kind of had some different ideas on what the title of the film meant because when you hear
Mhm.
Shining Through, you don't think of a World War II spy movie. It's an
Mhm.
interesting
Yeah.
title. So what's your take on the title? What you think it means?
I think that for me, the title is, here's someone who had everything working against her, right? Because at first, she's a woman. Number two, she's going into a male dominated world. Number
Mm,
three, she's not as educated or educated at Vassar, right? Which is the college where most elite women were educated back then.
yep.
She went to, I guess, Queens College or City College. And she had all these things that really could have kept her down, really could
Mm,
have, you know, diminished her, but yet she knew who she was. She knew what she stood for. And when it all came down to it, she's the person that shined through the difficulties, the
mm,
hard times,
yeah.
the preconceived notions that other people can have of
Yes.
her as well.
Yeah.
Which I think it's important. She talks about how there's a line in the movie where um, I guess Michael Douglas says, "Are you always this outspoken?"
Mm,
And she refers to how her dad was Jewish and her mom was Irish.
yep.
And she alludes to the combination of how
Yeah.
she comes from very strong backgrounds that are very
Yes.
outspoken. and
Yeah.
and I think that that's the other piece that I really like about it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, she was definitely a one of a kind character, and yeah, it's an interesting take on the what was going on in World War II. Sort of some of those
Mhm.
more like I guess hidden stories, that things are happening in the background that most people didn't associate with World War
Yeah.
II. Like you think about the conflict and the soldiers storming the
Mhm.
beach in Normandy and that sort of stuff. So it was
Yeah.
interesting to see a different take on it. You know, obviously the Nazis are portrayed, and Liam Neeson is in the film as well. And I reckon that was kind of his audition piece for Schindler's List. Probably Steven Spielberg was
Yeah, I guess so.
like, oh, there's
Yeah,
my Oscar Schindler, which he
that's
did
right.
a couple of years later. And we've also featured Schindler's List on the podcast too, way back at the start. So it's
Ooh,
good
fun.
to add this film to that collection now.
Yeah,
Yeah, brilliant. And do you have a favorite
it's good.
scene or a favorite moment from the film that comes to
I would
mind?
have to say the end of well, the next end, and I don't want to give it away, but there is a
Yep.
scene that there a lot of action is happening, and I think that this goes back to the title, right? The Michael Douglas character just he doesn't give up, right? And he keeps going in the middle of this action, and he kind of saves the day, or so we think.
Yep.
But as the character, the Melanie Griffith, is recounting for the documentary, um, she then talks about how she is yes, he might have like crossed the line for them and saved them from one circumstance, but she really came through, and she's the one who shined through because she had what they needed to bring outside enemy lines.
Yeah,
So yeah,
that's right.
so I
Yeah,
thought that's my favorite line when they
yeah.
talk about that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
fantastic. Yeah. And then obviously she's sort
Uh,
of telling the story as an older lady
mhm.
throughout the
Yeah.
film for that documentary. So she gets, I guess that's closure for her in a lot of ways, isn't
That's
it?
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So
Yeah.
it's great. I love that. I have to tell you, when my husband and I started dating, and as a new relationship, you're kind of finding what you like about each other. And our first Christmas together, he got me a copy of Shining Through, because I had it
Oh.
on of course I'm going to date myself now. I had it on a VCR tape, and I still have it. But of course I didn't have a VCR.
Right.
So when he had come over to my apartment, he's like, "Why do you hang on to this movie?" I'm like, "Because I love that movie."
Yep.
And for Christmas, he actually gave me the DVD.
Oh, nice. Very nice.
So
Yeah.
that was a nice.
Yep.
It was a lovely gesture, and he's
Yeah.
very thoughtful that way. So
Fantastic.
that's how I knew
Yeah.
he was a keeper.
Oh, there you go. He knew what you liked,
Yeah,
and he got
that's
it for
right.
you. So yeah. And when you mentioned this film to me, I thought, well, I haven't heard of that. I hope I can find it.
Uh-huh.
Fortunately, it's currently well, at the time of this recording, December 23, it's streaming on Disney Plus in Australia. So for our
Oh,
Australian
nice.
listeners, hopefully it's still
Well,
on there. You can go and check
I
it.
may have to go check that out in my Disney Plus here in the
Yeah.
States.
It might be on there too. Yeah. Awesome.
Mhm.
All right. Well, good chat about Shining Through. Definitely a film
Yeah,
some people might want to check out. So, we might move on to your next film now, Julie, if that's okay.
let's do it.
And this is
Yes.
the film that you attribute as being the one that was changing in some aspects. So, changed your
Mhm,
perspective, changed your viewpoint in some way. It's really quite broad, I guess, this category, because
mhm.
only you can really describe how it was a game changer for you. So yeah, let's hear all about this film. What could you tell us the title of the film and maybe a little bit about it?
Yeah, absolutely. So it is called The Family Stone.
Claire Danes, Diane Keaton, Rachel McAdams, Dermot Mulroney, Craig T. Nelson, Sarah Jessica Parker, and Luke Wilson. The Family Stone.
What's so great about you guys?
Nothing. It's just that we're all we've got.
And you're the worst.
I'm the worst.
And again, this could be one of these love it or hate it films. But one of the things that I love about the film, it has, again, big names. It has a fictional town in New England, which is where I live now. And Sarah Jessica Parker is one of the main characters, and she plays Meredith in the film.
Yep.
And she is engaged. She gets engaged to this nice young man, and they go to his family for Christmas. And I have been there. I have been the girlfriend that is
Yep.
coming to meet the family, and you're nervous, and you
Oh
have
yeah.
a lot of different things going on in your brain.
Mhm.
And ultimately, a lot of drama ensues, right? Because she doesn't really fit in, but
Yep.
there is a something going beneath the surface.
Mhm.
And again, I think that this is the one thing that changed my perspective a lot, that we in life tend to focus on ourselves, right? The Jessica Parker character is very self-absorbed. Like, do I fit in? And this family doesn't accept me. And look at everything that they're doing. Yet there was more going on beneath the surface.
Yep.
The mom had been diagnosed with cancer, and the sister was also the sister of the family.
Yep.
She was also going through her own stuff, and then the
Yeah.
other siblings. So there's
Yep.
all these undercurrents. And I think that we forget when we get into an uncomfortable situation, we tend to make it all about us.
Yeah.
And we think that this is happening to us. And we think that I don't fit in, or these people are being mean to me.
Mhm.
But at the end of the day, it really doesn't have to do or be about us.
No, you're right.
Everybody else is carrying their own stuff.
Exactly.
And this is
Yeah.
one of the things that it really, happens
Yep.
in everyday life. And as we're
Sure.
moving through the holidays, or whenever people are listening, I want you to think about when you get into these situations, right? That whether it's that difficult circumstance and you feel like you don't fit in, there might be other stuff, again, that is going on in the way that the family just kind of opens up and kind of puts their defenses down and
Mhm.
says, hey, this is going on with me, or I'm dealing with the aggressive, reoccurrence of a disease, and
Yeah.
hey, I'm not happy with my family, or I feel like I want more, I want a relationship, but I'm not even sure how to connect. So all these
Yeah.
things kind of play out.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, and it's quite true to life, isn't it? It's not really
Mhm.
cliched. It's not, you know, there's some familiarities
Yeah.
to the plot, but then yeah, like you said, each character is dealing with these things, and it's not really obvious at the start. It sort of
Yeah.
plays out over the course of the film. Yeah, and I just have to quickly share, like when this film first came out, 2005, it was at the peak of Sex in the City. At
Uh-huh.
that
Yeah.
time, I wasn't interested in that show. That was not my cup of tea. And I thought, oh, Sarah Jessica Parker movie. Okay, it's going to be like Sex in the City. Filed it away. I'm like, I'll probably never watch it. I know my wife has it on DVD downstairs. Um, but now as a host of this podcast, it's not about what I think about the film. And I watched it, and it
Yeah.
was not what I expected or assumed it was all the way back then.
Mhm.
And I guess people at the time who were fans of Sex of the City and Sarah Jessica Parker were like, wow, she's really playing a different kind of character here. Because obviously in that TV
Mhm.
show, she was really like a free spirit, said what and did kind
Right.
of what she want. Were you a Sex in the City fan? Did you sort of see it when it first came out?
Yes, of
Yeah.
course. I lived in New York City. At the
Yep.
time, not only did I live in New York City, but it's something that if you live in New York, you see stars walking around all the time.
Mm,
And for me, I lived in the Upper West Side, and also where one of the characters, Miranda, lived. So there was always filming. And although
right.
I loved the show, I hated it because it meant that parking was going to be unavailable on the street, and I had to like really drive far or put my car in the lot
Sure.
and pay a lot of money for parking because they were
Right.
filming Sex in the City. So
Of
you
course.
hated
Yeah.
to see the signs that, hey, in the next couple days we're going to be filming,
Right.
and it's like,
Yeah.
oh, what a headache.
Life in
But
New
yeah,
York,
I was
huh?
a big
Yeah.
fan.
There's always something
Life
happening.
in New York, absolutely. It was either
Yeah.
Sex in the City or Law and Order. Those were the two
Right.
things that you can count on being filmed in my neighborhood all the
Yeah.
time. So, but
Interesting.
it's a small price to pay for living in New York City.
Absolutely. I mean, it would be interesting. And, I've been there a bunch of times myself. And my last trip there
Mhm.
in 2010, I was there with my wife now, my girlfriend at the time, and a
Mhm.
friend. And we were walking through Central Park, and there was signs up saying, there is a movie being filmed. You may be filmed.
Yeah.
Please, no flash photography, blah, blah, blah. So we sit down at the
Mhm.
famous fountain. We're like, I wonder who we'll see.
Yeah.
And then we saw this man running backwards with a camera, and then a woman in black and this young guy running down the steps, and it was Lucy Liu, the
Ooh,
actress. And she was
fun.
jogging with this young guy, and then they stopped, and then they walk up a pathway, and they're having a conversation. So we were watching this scene be filmed, and then the film I later found out was this kind of Italian slash American production called
Okay.
"Someday This Pain Will Be Useful to You." Which
Oh.
focuses on this young guy who's like trying to make sense of his life, and his parents hire a life coach who played by Lucy Liu.
Oh, look at
And I
that.
just found the film online. It was really hard to find, but I finally found it. And I have to admit, I skipped to the scene that we watched filmed, and I was like peering
Right.
to see if we were there in the background on the fountain. But no, they didn't use that take. They must have done
Oh,
a bunch of takes. So we didn't make
they
it into the movie,
do.
but we were there and we saw that being filmed that day. So that was pretty cool. Yeah.
That's very fun. Well, so I have to give myself a little bit of props too. I was a background actor in a movie, but I was not in New York City. I was here in Connecticut, believe it or
Ah,
not. I had to come to Connecticut to be a background actor in
right.
a movie. So
What was
that
the
was
movie?
fun.
Can you tell us, or we just want to say?
Yeah, I can tell you. It's called Last Stop Christmas. And if you're, I mean, most people in the States know the famous Hallmark Christmas movies. It's one of the Hallmark Christmas movies.
Right.
And very, very fun. The interesting part about that film is that Emma, no, Emma Thompson from the Back to the Future is in the movie,
Yep.
and so is I can't think of his name, the professor, the scientist guy. He's
Oh,
also in the movie.
Christopher Lloyd
Yeah.
from Back to the Future.
Yeah, Christopher
Oh,
Lloyd. Thank
right,
you. My
right.
husband would be embarrassed that I don't remember his name. Yeah, so Christopher Lloyd was in the movie as well.
Yep.
And the premise of the movie is that this young woman lives in New York City and she's going home for the holidays. Or she's not going home for the holidays. She's a doctor and she's busy, but somehow she kind of goes back in time. So it's kind of like that premise of Back to the Future as well.
Ah,
And
yep.
she goes back in time and kind of redoes the holidays, and
Okay.
things play
Interesting.
out different, and how
Yeah.
she, there's maybe a different choice. So I'm and actually I got more screen time than I thought I would get. I was in a scene in the movie that they're in a big mansion for a Christmas party.
Right.
So it was very dressy. It was the middle of summer, so we had to be dressed in gowns,
Oh,
pretending we were in the middle of winter.
gosh.
But it was fun because
Yeah.
I also Erica Slesiak, which is play the matriarch of the movie. She was in my soap opera that I watched here in the States when I was growing up, called One Life to Live. So, of course, there's all these other people who are definitely more well known. And yet I was very starstruck with Erica Slesiak. So I went up to her, and I had seen her in New York multiple times walking
Right.
around, but this is the closest. And I said, "Hey, I know that, I've seen you in my neighborhood when I lived in New York, but I just, want to thank you. You entertained me throughout my high school days, and it was
Cool.
great." And
Yeah.
so when we were filming, we chatted a little bit. So when we were filming one of the scenes, she's like, "Hey, come stand over here." And she told me where to stand. So when they filmed and she's giving her line, I'm standing behind her. So
Ah,
that was
okay.
kind of fun. So
Cool. Awesome.
yeah, so I
We'll
get
have
to
to
see
go and
myself every
check that
Christmas.
out. Yeah.
Yeah, I get to see myself during Christmas movie time.
That's
And it's
awesome.
just like a quick 5 seconds. So
Yeah, yeah. Well, I have a similar story I'll just share quickly. That I was an
yeah.
extra in an Australian film, and you see me in the background for about half a second. So
Love
I
it.
might save the full story of that for another time. But yeah, it's cool to. I actually went and saw it at the movies and saw myself on the big screen for like 2
Oh,
seconds.
love it.
Very end of the movie, I had to sit through the whole film to see it, but that was
Yeah.
pretty cool. So yeah, but
Great.
coming back to Family Stone before we
Yes,
get too
let's
far
do
off
it.
track, but really interesting to hear that story. So I guess it's a Christmas film, but not necessarily a
Mhm.
really holly jolly happy Christmas film. There's a lot of
Right,
stuff
right.
going on with this family. How was this film? I guess what did it change for you? Like, how was it not what
Yeah.
you expected, or how have you
Yeah,
viewed
for
things
sure.
differently? Yeah.
The one thing that it really changed for me, I think that from the outside, we look at everybody else's family
Mm,
as this idyllic family, but there's always something going on in the background that we really don't know about. And I think that for me, it reminded me that people may look like they have this charmed, beautiful life, right, from the outside, but in the inside, they're not immune to suffering. They're not immune to disease. They're not immune to having relationships that are trying. But ultimately, the other thing too is that your family, at the end of the day, you can choose to be a part of the family. And like in the movie, the characters kind of make peace. And, obviously time evolves and
Mm,
changes and things happen, but
mm.
um, they continue to make the commitment to be part of the family and to reconnect and to be there. And I think that that's a great lesson for all of us, no matter where
Yeah,
we are. We live
yeah,
in a divisive world, right?
we do.
People tend to have difference of opinions. Yeah, family members fight or break up or whatnot. But ultimately, you have to remember what connects you,
Yeah,
what are the commonalities between people. And I think
that's
that
right.
that's one of the messages that I really love about Family Stone.
Yeah,
And again,
yeah,
it's got some slapstick comedy, which I love
yeah,
to some extent.
yeah.
But it really does explore, the triumphant of, it sounds so corny, but the triumphant of the human spirit. We can
Mm.
be hit with difficulty, tragedy, change in relationships, but ultimately we can make the choice to heal. We can make the choice to move forward no matter what happens. So
Yeah.
I think that that's one of the lessons I love of that movie.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's true to life. And at the end of the day,
Yeah.
your family are going to have your back, despite
Yeah,
despite
absolutely.
your differences. And you can have a brother or a sister, like, yeah, they're your brother or sister, but you could be so different in your personality and your values and your identity. But at the end of the day,
Hmm.
you're family and you're there for each
Yeah.
other, even if when it's hard, even when it's awkward, even when it's stressful, you stick by each other. Because yeah,
Oh,
when
for
when the
sure.
chips are down,
Yeah.
we go home and we go to those closest to us, and
Yeah.
so
And
you got
we
to work
have to
through
get
the you got to work
past,
through the crap,
yeah.
basically.
And we have to get past that, right? Because the relationships won't ever be perfect. And I
Never.
think that
Mm,
I like that there's difficulty and there is a lot of, it could be a lot of animosity,
yeah.
and yet people choose to get past that, and people choose to come together and really remember
Mhm.
what's more important at the end of the day. So I like that.
Yeah, yeah, real, absolutely, yeah. And is it a film you've watched several times? Like,
Yeah,
is this one you watch each
absolutely.
Christmas? Yeah.
It's yes, that's
Yeah.
another one that I save for Christmas time. That I love movies during Christmas.
Mm,
I was
mm.
telling you earlier, I don't watch a lot of television, but during
Yep.
Christmas time, I make up for the whole year, I think. I
Yeah.
love watching movies, and
Yeah.
I was actually my husband went to bed early last night, and I wasn't quite ready to go. It was super early, and I sat and I turned on the little fireplace and had some tea, and I got to watch a couple movies.
Nice. Yeah. It's the
So,
time of year for
yeah,
that, isn't it? Yeah. That's
yeah,
like the
it
rule in our
is.
house. Once December 1st comes, it's for our two daughters. They watch
Mhm.
movies on a Friday, Saturday night, have some ice cream. It's Christmas movies. And then once
Nice.
it's maybe Boxing, we might let it stretch a couple of days after Christmas and
Mhm.
then no more Christmas
Okay.
movies. We're pretty done by that point because they've watched all the
Okay.
Santa Clauses, Elf,
Yep.
Polar Express, Home Alone. They're watching all those kind of ones at the moment, which is fun. But yeah, I really
Yeah,
didn't know
so
this was a
fun.
Christmas film. It wasn't, I didn't know what to expect with this film because at the time it came out, I'm
Yeah.
like, yeah, I'll never watch that. But that was nearly 20 years ago. And, I'm
Yeah.
a bit older and wiser now. And and I'm glad you brought it to the podcast because it was
Yeah.
I really enjoyed it. I got quite a lot out of it. I
It's a
thought,
fun movie, and again, it has a lot of really big names: Sarah Jessica Parker, Luke
yeah,
Wilson. It has Rachel McAdams,
yeah,
and again,
Diane
really
Keaton,
fun.
yeah,
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 Diane Keaton and who, uh, Greg T. Nelson, is it
yeah. As the
that plays
dad,
the
yep.
dad? Yeah, yeah, the
Dermot
dad. Yeah.
Mulroney, who was
Hmm.
on TV
Yeah,
quite a lot.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah, some
so
great.
good.
Claire Danes as her sister. Yep.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Claire, I forgot Claire Danes was there. You're
Yeah,
right.
yeah, it was a
So
great cast.
she was
Yeah.
there too. So
Mm,
it really, really well done. And again, the intricacy of human relationships and people being human. I love that.
mm. Yeah, very,
Yeah.
very human. Absolutely. Yeah, and without giving it away, because we don't like to spoil movies on here, a
No, we don't.
a bittersweet ending. Like some
Hmm.
relationships are restored, new ones happen. Certain
Hmm.
people aren't
Yeah.
there the next time
Yeah.
it comes around. But yeah, that's life. That's life,
Yeah,
and you
it's
just
a season of life, right? People come into your life for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. And
mm,
I think that this is what happens in the movie, that there's people that come in for a period and others don't. And at the end of the day, again, you want to go ahead and focus on what's important. And, there's another part of the movie that, that that I really like as well, and is when the character Everett, his brother, is gay, and he and his partner want to express want to adopt a child. So they express, they are wanting to do that, and again opens up a discussion. And I think that these are the kind of conversations that, rather than allowing them to be divisive within a family, having these type of conversations can help to create a dialogue and understanding amongst people. Because sometimes we just think, I don't like that, or I don't want that, or not in my family, but we've never had a conversation of why, or tell me more about that, and why do you feel that way. And I think that the more that we create space for us to dialogue, the better we are, the better that we can understand each other.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, really,
Yeah,
really well said. And it's not easy, but it's necessary, because
right.
going all that time without things being said, then it gets really, really hard. And then you've got
Yeah,
then you'll have real division in the family, and
yeah.
nobody wants that at the end of the day.
Nobody
Life's
wants
too
that.
short.
No,
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
absolutely. So,
Alrighty.
so I love that for movie for that reason.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, cool. And we've got one more film to go, Julie. So this is the film that you think everyone needs to see. And again, a
Mhm.
film I hadn't heard of or knew about. So thanks for introducing it to me. And I watched it and thoroughly, thoroughly enjoyed it. Found definitely some things in the film that I could relate to. So
Mhm.
yeah, I'll let you tell us about this film. What's it called? And
Yeah.
yeah, give us a quick little rundown of it.
Yeah, absolutely. So this film, definitely, yes, everybody has to watch it. And the
Mm.
reason is because um there's a message behind it. The name of the movie is called The Way, and it is Martin Sheen plays the main character. And of course, a lot of people have not heard of this film.
My son was almost 40.
Yeah, but he'll always be your baby.
What was your son like?
Smart, confident, stubborn, pissed me off a lot. Was a lot like you. Hey, that kid took my bag. Hey! Hey! You can keep the pack! Just give me the box!
You don't choose a life, Dad. You live one.
His son, Emilio Estevez, actually directed the movie, and I
Yeah,
believe maybe even wrote it.
yeah,
And
great director.
he plays his son, Martin Sheen's character in the movie. And no spoiler alert, because this happens within the first 5 minutes of the movie.
Yep.
Martin Sheen plays a dentist, and he has a son who has chosen, after the death of the mom, to not continue with his PhD program. He wants to travel the world, and he says to the dad, I don't want to study sociology in a classroom. I want to be with people and kind of travel the world and learn about people by interacting with them. So he was about to embark on a pilgrimage in Spain called the Camino de Santiago. And as he started the pilgrimage, he dies in an accident
Yep.
At the beginning of the pilgrimage. And Martin Sheen gets the call, and then he goes to France, because the Camino de Santiago, the French route of the Camino de Santiago, begins in a town called Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port, which is in the Pyrenees Mountains. And people begin that hike there. And the point of the pilgrimage is that you are going to follow the steps that St. James, the apostle of Jesus,
Yep.
took to Spain to tell the world about Jesus and share the good news. So many people throughout centuries have done this pilgrimage and followed the steps of St. James. So a lot of people, many do it for religious reasons. And in the film, the character doesn't seem to necessarily have a religious reason for doing the pilgrimage. He was just interested in doing the walk, right?
Yep.
But sadly, he died in the very beginning. of his pilgrimage, which I have done the pilgrimage since because of the movie. And I will tell you, the French Pyrenees are no joke. And my friend Melissa, who I've traveled the world with, she is the person who told me about the film. And she says, you have to watch this movie and tell me what you think. And I watched the movie and I thought, we need to do this. And she's like, I know. So that was definitely an inspiration to go in this personal journey and personal pilgrimage to go and explore. And again, many people do the pilgrimage for many different reasons. And that's one of the things that the movie depicts. It depicts how the Martin Sheen character, when he is faced with, he was estranged from his son, and then all of a sudden his son was chasing his dreams, but he died doing so, right?
Yeah.
And he decides that he is going to finish the pilgrimage on behalf of his son.
Yeah.
So everybody's like, you can't do this, you're too old, you haven't trained, oh my gosh. But he is, obsessed with him. And he decides to start. And he didn't really know what he was getting into. But the fun part about the film is that he meets people along the way that are also, for their own personal reasons, doing the pilgrimage.
Real characters.
And real character. And by the way, when you are doing the pilgrimage yourself, that's how it is. You meet people from different walks of life, and you create a very strong, interesting bond with them, because you are walking for 5, 6, 7, 8 hours maybe for the day, and you're just going along, and you end up talking to people and opening up, and you share your meals with them. And I love that about the movie, that it depicts the real life of a pilgrim while also exploring the grief that this father is going through. And exploring, because I'm sure there was a lot of regret from his character, that maybe and they do some flashbacks to conversations with him and his son, and he starts to see, like, wow, what did I do? I missed my time with my son. And it's really interesting, and I love that movie for it. There's so many messages within.
For sure. Kind of going back to what you were saying about the family stone, like, family is family, even if you disagree. And if things get left unsaid and you don't talk to each other, sometimes something will happen, and it will force you to confront what it is that distanced you in the first place. So I think my impression was he did that walk to be like, okay, I need to honor my son's legacy, finish what he couldn't do. And a lot of walking is really put the past behind you, put your feet on the ground, get in the present moment, and walk into this new future. And you don't know what the future is going to bring, and he certainly didn't. And he had his guards up quite a bit when he started picking up these tag-alongs, and he found it quite challenging to be with them. And then eventually he lowered his guard, and he was a new man by the end of it. And so you said you've done the walk yourself. So I'm just curious, like, in the film, obviously they have to reach certain points each day to sleep and eat and drink wine and that kind of thing. Is that quite accurate?
Eat and drink wine.
Was it like you had to try and get to a certain point each day?
So there's a couple different things that happens in the walk, and I love this about the walk itself. So if, depending on the type of person that you are, if you are a planner, yes, you will probably plan ahead. I want to start here, and there most of the guidebooks tell you approximately, if you want to make from Saint Jean Pied de Port and make it to Santiago de Compostela, which is where the big cathedral is and the pilgrimage ends. If you want to make it, it's anywhere between 35 to 40 days, depending on how fast you walk. So there is recommended itineraries. Now, my friend Melissa and I are not very good with recommended itineraries. We like to do our own thing. And then the other thing is we were going to, so the first walk is about 22 kilometers the first day, but you are in the Pyrenees Mountains. You're climbing up, you're climbing down. Now there is an alternate route that you can you still climb the mountains, but you're kind of going around as well, and it's a little longer. And most people do it in 2 days rather than the one.
Right.
And that's what we decided to do. We decided to do that route, number one, because they warned us that the conditions were very windy, rainy, and there were some mudslides. And obviously, having watched the movie and knowing that that's where the character Emilio Estevez dies, we didn't want to do
Gosh.
that. So we
Yeah.
decided to take the longer way.
Fair enough.
And for the most part, and by the way, I did the first time I did the walk was 2016. So there was an app and some YouTube videos that kind of shared information. Now there is so much information about the walk. Most people, when I did the walk the first time, were carrying the guidebook, the original guidebook.
Yeah.
And the thing that most pilgrims did is, as you carried the book, you would rip the pages of the stages that you did. So the book kept getting smaller and smaller, and you weren't carrying something as heavy. But yes, you can decide how long you want to walk most days. Most people, again, have the stages set if they want to follow, the guidebook or the recommended distance if they're on a schedule to finish at a certain amount of days. My friend Melissa and I are Camino turtles, and we also knew we were doing the walk in stages. We weren't going to finish and do it for 35, 40 days all in one set. We were going to do it in multiple visits.
Okay.
So,
Right.
which you can do. A lot of people choose to do that. And one of the things that, we picked up our little group, just like the Martin Sheen character does. The one thing that was interesting when I did the walk the first time is the night I left, I was leaving for Spain. My husband's nephew, who was about our age at the time, in his 40s, he had been in the hospital for a very long time, and he passed that night. And at first, I wasn't going to go because I wanted to be here for my husband and the family. And my husband's like, no, go. He would want you to go.
Yeah.
So I was like Martin Sheen's character, listening and just spending a little bit of the grief. Obviously, it wasn't my child, but it was tough to see someone so young, right, pass away. And like, he had his life in front of him. And it was very healing in some ways, because there were times in which we found people, like I said, throughout the road, and we would get to share a little bit, and you get to know people. We also had the luxury of saying, hey, there is a big festival in this town tomorrow, so maybe we'll just stay here, even though we could keep walking and just enjoy the people and enjoy the event, and really not be on an itinerary, which we all have this itinerary, this calendar, this go, go, go. And this is just a great opportunity to be on your own, which is a lot of what you see, that they follow a route, but basically they can decide, hey, I'm tired for the night, let's stay here. Or I think we can keep going, let's do it. And it's a big parallel for life.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? Yeah. And the power of walking long distances, and a place that you might never go, or like, personally, in my downtime, like all the main roads I drive down to get around town, occasionally I'll do the walk, and it might be like 8Ks, 9Ks, and even just after a 2-3 hour walk, which I can do fairly easily, my mind's much clearer. I kind of go on a walk with like a question or a problem, and I try and let the answer just reveal itself on the walk. So I can only imagine what doing that walk would do for your mind, your soul. Like, how are you? What was like can I ask what was your reason for doing the pilgrimage, and how you changed by the end of it?
I think that's a great question, and a lot of people will ask you that. I had multiple reasons for doing the pilgrimage. Number one, it had been a couple of years since my dad had passed, and my dad and I were very close. And one of the things that my dad said to me prior to him passing is, honey, you are so adventurous. You know, don't ever not go and do adventures. Keep doing that. You're so brave. You put yourself out there. And
Mhm.
and I remember I was at a point in which I was I was not feeling brave. I was feeling stuck, and I was feeling like needed to shift. I needed to reconnect to myself and needed to kind of center myself. And I knew that I could have gone on a trip anywhere, right? But I decided that I also wanted to challenge myself physically.
Yep.
And I think that at times we get very complacent in life.
Yeah.
And I felt like um, I have an autoimmune, and definitely that was one of the things that was sort of impacting me at the time. And I was traveling a lot for work, and I thought, is this the path that I want to be in, or am
Mm.
I supposed to be here? So I figured going and just sort of recalibrating, like you said, walking is that thing where you really are in the present moment,
Oh yeah.
right? You and you know, for someone like me, I'm a little clumsy. So I have to pay attention at times, especially if I'm on a trail, like where I'm walking. And that really is a way for me to connect to my thoughts, connect to where I
Mm.
am, and
Yeah.
not worry about, you know, where I've been or where I'm going. I'm
Yep.
just really concerned with that present moment. I journaled a lot during that walk,
Mm.
and you know, there's a lot of self-discovery. There's a lot of things that I came back with that I had some
Yeah.
clarity on, as far as, you know, I
Amazing.
knew that I loved my work, but I also knew that eventually I wanted to go out on my own,
Yep.
which is what I'm doing now. And the idea started to kind of formulate then.
Yeah.
And I started to see that in my life, I had spent a lot of time looking to arrive. When I get this job, when I get this education, when I
Right.
marry, when I do that. And
Yeah.
and a lot of us do that, right?
Mm.
But we forget that it's not about the destination, it's more about the journey that we're on.
100%.
And that's really one of the lessons. And again, in the movie, you see that very clearly,
Yep.
that, you know, they're very concerned about getting to Santiago at one point, but
Yep.
they start to realize that it's more about what they're going through, and,
Mm.
and creating the connections, the
Yep.
introspection as well throughout the
Yeah.
movie. So, yeah.
For sure. And the main character, Martin Sheen, plays Tom, I think his name was.
Yep.
You know, he was a successful doctor, spent his
Hmm.
his spare time on the golf course with his other doctor buddies, and lived
Yeah.
this kind of, you know, insular life. And then he forced himself to take this walk, gets out of his comfort zone, and even
Hmm.
it's probably not even till he's about halfway down the trail that he finally just says what he's really thinking. That scene when he's had a
Yeah.
bit too much to drink and he has a go at everybody. And then
Yes.
after that, he's like, "Oh crap," you know, and he apologizes and make amends. Then he
Hmm.
realizes, you know, that he needs these people and they need him.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it's about they'll have their own different reasons for doing the pilgrimage, and they're
Hmm.
all changed people at the end of it. You know, and I've found the movie so inspiring, and it made me think about, you know,
Yeah.
how I want to continue to honor the legacy of my daughter, who most people
Mm.
listening will know, who passed away last year from brain cancer.
Yeah.
And you know, I've
Mm.
thought about
So
doing a
sorry,
walk
Brian,
of
again.
some kind. I'd really
Yeah.
love to do that. I know my mates would be like, "All right, Forrest Gump, you're not going to run across Australia." It's like, well, I'm not going to run. No, absolutely, I'm not a runner.
No, you can't run it.
No, Forrest Gump just ran because he felt like running. He didn't have a reason, right?
Right.
But
That's right. That's
you
right.
know, walking, I love walking, you know, and hearing your story and the fact you've done it and that you're planning to do it again is
Yeah.
really that's really inspiring, you know, and I would love to
Well,
hear more
it's a
about your
challenge.
journey as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a challenge, Brian. And I will tell you that even when you prep for the walk, when you, because the second time that I went, I had learned a lot of lessons the first time, right? Um, One of the things that they tell you is do not carry a pack that is heavier than 10% of your body weight. And my
Right.
pack was not heavy at all, by all means, but definitely we carry a lot of unnecessary stuff with us.
Oh yeah.
I think we had been walking we had gotten to the city of Pamplona with my friend, and this is the first time after walking in the mountains and through some small villages that you get to the city, and you're taken back by all the hustle and bustle. But more importantly, one of the first things we did is we went to the post office to get rid of stuff and mail stuff home, because
Yeah.
we think we need a lot, but we really don't.
No.
We really need very, very little.
Mhm.
And it's very important to remember that, because the possessions, like in the Martin Sheen character, really you're caught up in your country club, you're caught up with your life. There's a certain level of comfort, but is that just the white noise of life, right?
Yeah.
Are you really connecting? Are you really connecting to yourself also, right?
Mhm.
Or are these things kind of filling a void that it's not really filling, it is just kind of numbing you from life? So
Yeah,
that's one of the things that I see in the movie, that
for
you're
sure.
forced to see, like, what am I carrying?
Yeah.
He carries the ashes of his deceased son,
Yeah.
and
Yep.
he loses his pack at one point. So it's
Yeah.
like, you realize what matters most in
Yes.
life
Yeah.
when you have so little, and you know that it is the people that
Mm.
matter the most. It's
Yeah.
the
True.
relationships, and
Yep.
it's the memories as well,
Yep.
because you create these memories that then
Mm.
take you through life.
Absolutely. And I don't think anything else puts that into perspective more than the grief you feel
Yeah.
when you lose a loved one, especially the loss of a child.
Yeah.
It really, really puts things into perspective, how
Yeah.
short and fragile life is, and then literally overnight, your whole belief system and value system has changed, and you're never the same
Mhm.
person.
Yeah.
I think, my experience has given me the opportunity to be stronger and do things that I normally
Mhm.
wouldn't have done before. And I have, and a big part of that for me this year has been launching this podcast, something that I was
Mm.
thinking about for years and putting off and procrastinating about, but I'm like, you know what? No, I'm just going to do it.
Let's do it.
It's
Yeah.
got me thinking of all these other things I want to do, and it's just the beginning. So I related a lot to the character of Tom, and I would love to
Yep.
do that walk one day. I'm really, really inspired. The longest I've ever walked in one go is 26 kilometers, and it was
Mhm.
pretty silly. It was walking home from the city one night after a bar had shut, and I lost my friends, and I had no money for a taxi, and my mobile
There
phone
you go.
had died, and I walked straight down the main highway, 26 kilometers home in
Oh
these
my goodness.
low-cut leather shoes. I made it 5 hours and 45 minutes later. My legs were
That's
still
great timing for
weak.
26.
I
So
did all right. I was a young guy at the time. I don't think
there
I'd
you
do that
go.
now in low-cut leather shoes, but even on that
Yep.
walk, like I felt very, like it was a spiritual experience. I
Yeah.
also had a
It's
bit to drink
empowering.
as well, but that probably didn't help.
Well, speaking
So
of
that's my
drinking, that's one of
pilgrimage.
the things that they show you
Yeah,
in the movie too.
that's
And by
right.
the way, that's really true of the movie. The movie shows you that at the end of the day, they go to the outdoor cafes and they're having some wine. That's exactly how it is. If you don't like to drink, you're going to be around people that drink a lot
That's
because
right. Yeah.
in some cases, they have most of the restaurants in the small villages, or the pensions, or the albergues where everybody stays. And these are just for pilgrims. They're hostels, but they're
Yeah.
only for pilgrims. You have to have your credentials as a pilgrim to stay there.
Right.
Um, but some of them offer the pilgrim menu, and the pilgrim menu consists of your starter, your main course, dessert, and a bottle of wine, or all you can drink wine. And in some
Nice.
cases, you're
Sounds good.
just talking to
Yeah.
people,
Yep.
having a great in-depth conversation. You're talking
Mhm.
about where you've been, who you are, what you're
Love that
dealing
idea.
with, and you're
Mm.
having a glass of wine. And in some cases, someone, pulls out a guitar and you end up singing, and
Fantastic.
it's a great
Yeah.
camaraderie for
What an
sure.
amazing experience. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the film, I think, from how you've described it and how the film portrays it, it sounds like it's
Mhm.
quite true to how it really is.
Yeah, it
And I love that. I
is.
love connecting with people from around the world. At the end of the
Yeah, me
day,
too.
we're kind of all really the same.
Yeah.
We're all on a walk. We're all walking away from something. We're all walking towards
Mhm.
something. So this is a great
Yeah.
metaphor for that. And
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
very
And that's
inspiring.
what happens in the movie, by the way, Brian, because
Yeah.
all these characters that are with Tom, um, are so different, such different walks of life, and they are walking away from something or going towards something that they want, that they think they're going to get from this walk.
Yeah.
But ultimately, their defenses are broken down, and they can create a dialogue among each other. And although if we met under other circumstances, you would think that we're very different, and yet we're not. We're very alike.
Yeah.
And the people that I met through the walk, I have to say I probably remember 90% of the people that I've met that I spend time with, and I remember them by name and remember their stories, and they have touched my life in so many incredible ways. And then the people, this is something that a lot of people don't talk about. The people that live in the villages, in the pensions and the restaurants that cater to the pilgrims, they are incredible people, because think about it, this is their everyday life. They have people coming in and out from all walks of life, but yet you would think that I am the first pilgrim arriving at their place, and I am the first person that they're going to go out of their way to make comfortable. There's people that as you walk sometimes leave water if they know that there is no water in between stops, and typically you can get to a store, but they leave water or snacks for pilgrims. There's some instances in which a lot of the churches also host you for free, and obviously they ask for a donation, and I love staying in these places. And but those were the most incredible experiences too, because here are these people who spend their life giving to others, and they're giving to you, and you're just like, wow, this is amazing. Like they're pampering me. It's incredible.
Wow. Yeah. What a journey. And the film obviously inspired you to do it. The film's inspired me to do it. And I think anyone who's not seen this, you owe it to yourself to watch The Way.
Absolutely.
And you will, we can all relate to
we can relate to that.
needing to take a walk and release some stuff. And
100%. And if it's not that walk, it's a great metaphor for life. And I encourage people to pay attention to some of those details. There is something that is said among pilgrims. And I will venture to say, they say that the Camino, right, the pilgrimage calls you, because a lot of people will watch the film and they think, oh, this is nice. A lot of people will watch the film and they feel the calling. So I think you're being called to the Camino.
Yeah, absolutely. If it resonates with you, it's like it's something you need to do. So
for sure.
Yeah, well, very inspiring, Julie. And again, thank you for introducing me to these films, and all 3 films that I hadn't seen, so all newbies for me.
Great.
So thank you.
I love it.
Yeah, so really great, really great. And this has been a fascinating conversation, and just really I'm sure just a hint of the life experience that you've got, and the perspective you have on things is amazing, which I'm sure is what makes you such a great coach, and that helps
you're so kind.
So many people. And you've found these films that you really connect with, and hopefully our listeners will check them out and connect with them as well. So our time has come to a close, but thank you very much for being on My Movie Story. It's been it's been a privilege hearing your journey.
Thank you.
Hearing your story.
Thank you so much.
Films. And thank you very much. It's been great to have you.
Brian, thank you so much for having me. I love talking about films and talking about life and life experiences, and art imitates life, or vice versa, right? So go to the movies and pay attention to the different lessons that we can gain from these movies that really impact our lives. So thank you again, and great job in the work that you're doing.
Thank you. All right. Thanks a lot, Julie. Take care.
Take care.
Bye. Thanks for tuning in to My Movie Story. We hope you enjoyed today's episode with our special guest and the movies that we talked about. Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and follow us on Spotify or your favorite podcast platform. Your support means a lot to us. You can also stay connected with us on social media for all the latest updates and special content, and you'll find our page on Facebook. Until next time, take care and enjoy the movies. See you on the next episode.